and welcome back to another edition of Every Town Has an Elm Street, the Ark of E's exclusive Nightmare on Elm Street podcast featuring us, the Brothers Blanchard. I am part B of that equation. I am Matthew Blanchard. I am your current lead host on this franchise deep dive through the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. With me, as always, is my co-host and brother,
Patrick J. Blanchard.
If we are A and B and 1 and 2, you are 1/A as the elder brother. And we are going once more into the murky depths of the dream world of Freddy Krueger. Last week we were on a high. We were talking about the good, the superior, the best Nightmare on Elm Street movie, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. We have skipped straight over Freddy vs. Jason to talk about the Platinum Dunes remake from 2010.
Yep.
We're skipping Freddy vs. Jason for two very simple reasons. Number one, of all of the films after Freddy's dead, it's the only one that connects to the main franchise. Has the classic version of Freddy.
Yes.
So we're going to come to that as kind of a refresher and talk about it at the end. Also, this movie kind of sucks, and I want to talk about a fun movie at the end of the franchise. So we're going to talk about Freddy vs. Jason next week. Now, if you've been following us ever since Camp Crystal Lake Revisited, you know we have discussed Freddy vs. Jason before.
Yes. In fact, we may assign that as homework at the end of this podcast to prepare us for next week.
To go and listen not only to the episode featuring Freddy vs. Jason of Camp Crystal Lake Revisited, but perhaps if you've not listened to all of it, to catch up on all of Camp Crystal Lake Revisited, where we go through the Friday the 13th.
I'm not gonna assign that as homework.
Well, it's not homework. I can't grade you, but it would behoove you to listen to us and figure out the kind of things we like.
I mean, I can grade you if you listen to it all. I'll give you an A.
I'm not gonna grade people. That's just weird. It's creepy. That's almost as creepy as Freddy Krueger being a teacher.
He's a caretaker, not a teacher.
Mm-hmm. There's the dream sequence. All right, so we're gonna talk about this because we're gonna talk about this. We're here to do it. We're gonna do it.
You know, here's the interesting thing.
This is the Nightmare on Elm Street movie I am least interested in talking about. To be perfectly honest with you.
I remember way back in the day, the day of 8 weeks ago, 9 weeks ago at this point.
Yes.
When we were all excited to talk about the Friday the 13th remake.
Exactly. It was an amazing experience. It was like, after that long slog through those crappy Friday movies, we're finally going to get to talk about a good one. We're going to talk about the reboot. It is the exact opposite.
Exact opposite.
Even the bad Freddys we've talked about, it's been like, you know what? There's still redeeming value here.
I would totally watch a Freddy's Revenge over this any day.
Sure.
Like,
Hell
any
yeah.
day. 5, done.
Sold. It's very interesting how this franchise is the opposite. And we have gone through this seemingly enjoyable process, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, we got to last week's episode, and it's like, I think we've talked about the worst movie we've talked about here so far is Freddy's Revenge. And you know what? All the worst we could really say about it is it's a mixed bag and not really written very well.
Yes.
This is a terrible movie. So I can say lots of bad things about this movie. So,
although if you find it good, please email us.
Tell us why. Tell us why you like this Nightmare on Elm Street movie as opposed to say, I don't know,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
An actual Nightmare on Elm Street. All right, so let's just dive right in. So, New Line is gone. New Line was bankrupt. They tried to, shore up their cash flow with a little movie called Freddy vs. Jason. Wasn't enough.
Surprisingly, because that movie made bank.
It did. There was some There was some financial kerfuffle involving the Lord of the Rings that left New Line a little cash poor going into that era.
Yeah.
And things did not go well. Mistakes were made.
It's funny that you mentioned that.
What, mistakes being made?
No, that there's a Freddy movie that ends an era.
Huh?
Because we're getting ready to talk about a Freddy movie that ends an era.
Very much so. Because this is the capstone, unfortunately, on the Platinum Dunes remake.
Yep.
Which is a shame, because up until here, it had done so well.
Yes.
I believe there's actually a quote from the producer. It was like, this movie was such a disservice to the fans and was handled so poorly that the phone didn't ring at our office for 2 years.
Yeah.
That's damning. Considering these are the people who did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, which blew open doors.
Yep.
Amazing, amazing film. I mean, of all the remakes that Platinum Dunes did, that's the best, in my opinion, still. TCM.
Yeah.
Friday probably a close second.
Yep.
In my mind. This, no, terrible. Yeah.
But yeah, so New Line is gone, and
which means that New Line has now become a boutique house.
Yeah.
Of Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers. If there's anything Warner Brothers knows, it's, hey, I own the copyright to something. Let me exploit that. So they've got Platinum Dunes, and they've got Friday the 13th, and they've got A Nightmare on Elm Street. So they assemble a team to make a Friday the 13th movie.
Yep.
And that team goes off. They write a script quickly, and they make a movie quickly. The brief was to kind of do a broad overview that kind of recapped sort of the broad strokes of the franchise, but kept the spirit of it alive.
Yep.
That team delivered. The exact same brief is given in this instance. And what starts as a lengthier process of multiple screenplays being written over an extra year's worth of time. Effectively, they were going into pre-production at almost the exact same time. Like, the writing phase was at the same time. These movies could have been hot on the heels of each other within months. They were not.
No.
And the extra time is because there were 8 drafts of this movie. There were a couple where it was a prequel, and then there were like 5 drafts that were just this iteration of the movie where it's a straight remake.
Right.
And rather than going, okay, I like this, let you, writer, go and do a 9th draft that takes all of these things and works them together evenly, they just grafted what they liked from each of the 8 drafts into one finished script. Which is why you have prequel elements that are very... They stick out in the middle of the movie, I guess would be the best way to phrase it. Yeah. So, with the success of Platinum Dunes, this is a no-brainer, right? I mean, this is Nightmare on Elm Street. This is the gold fucking standard of 80s horror.
Yes.
I mean, Friday the 13th is just that's a workhorse of a horror film. This is the best of the best of the best of the best. Biggest moneymaker ever. Where does it go wrong?
Well, it goes wrong in so many places. It goes wrong in some casting choices.
Yeah.
It goes wrong in a director who really didn't want to take the project, but was told that it would be his golden ticket.
Well, I mean, it's Nightmare on Elm Street.
And
it was, in many ways, Wes Craven's golden ticket.
And when Michael Bay tells you,
this is your golden ticket,
you jump.
You listen, yeah.
Unfortunately, this is the only film that Mr. Samuel Bayer has directed.
To date.
Yes, this was supposed to be his golden ticket. It is now 8 years later, and this is his only film.
That's unfortunate. Well, so let's bring up the elephant in the room. I already did accidentally by mentioning his name. Wes Craven, not supportive of this movie. They didn't talk to Wes Craven. They didn't say, hey, Wes, we're remaking A Nightmare on Elm Street. What do you think of it?
I thought you said Bob Shea wasn't involved in this project.
Oh, that's awesome, because Bob Shea's a dick. No, unfortunately, he is not. But at the same time, nobody reaches out to Wes.
Okay.
And Wes had gone on the record. I think we've talked about Wes Craven multiple times. Have we mentioned that Wes Craven is no longer with us?
I can't remember if we have or not.
I don't believe we have. We have spoken about Wes in the present tense several times, and I just realized that. Wes Craven, who is sadly no longer with us,
Yes.
was very upfront about the fact that there did not need to be a remake to this movie. Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. Nightmare on Elm Street is a Nightmare on Elm Street. Period. End of discussion. He was not a fan. From before the movie came out, he was less of a fan after he saw it.
Like, I know.
Wes is usually pretty circumspect about shit. He's not usually the, man, fuck that.
Well, no, he's the English teacher who's having tea in his office.
Right, exactly.
With the corduroy jacket and the pockets on his.
Yeah, totally. So
but
it's very telling that he was very vocal about his dislike of Nightmare on Elm Street.
I know we've talked about the idea of ownership.
Yeah.
You can't. I theorize that you can't make a Nightmare on Elm Street because of the way ownership of movies imbued itself in the audience.
Right.
This you can remake Dracula because
1,000 times.
because
Right.
it exists in a time before video.
Yeah.
And so that you don't have Dracula at hand. So when a new movie came out after the new one, it was a new thing. It was great.
Right.
But Freddy came out right at the dawn of VHS home ownership.
Yes.
So much so that I believe it's one of the reasons why number 2 a year later spiked in ticket sales in theaters.
Sure.
Because of home ownership. Well, you can't remake Freddy because I own Freddy.
Yeah.
I have it. I can pop it in my DVD player. I can pop it in my VHS. I can pop it in my Blu-ray. Yeah. It's mine.
And I can revisit Elm Street whenever I want.
Yes.
And I can return to that world.
Generations prior to 1984 couldn't do this.
Right.
And generations after 84 can do it, and it becomes even more pervasive with this fandom ownership.
I think there's also a bit of a strength of franchise problem here. I'm going to give you an example. James Bond is a very well-known franchise, but the franchise has a formula that it lives in, and you can recast James Bond. Somebody else can be James Bond because the personality traits of James Bond were created by Ian Fleming in the books and by Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman when they made the movie. The actor brings what they bring to it, but the character is created by those men.
Right. It's another instance, just real fast, of something existing prior.
But you can't recast John McClane in Die Hard. Because John McClane is intrinsically Bruce Willis. Because Bruce Willis brought to that role what made that role what it is. Jason is James Bond. Michael Myers is James Bond.
Yes.
you can put anybody else in that suit, and they can do that job, and it doesn't matter. But Freddy Krueger is John motherfucking McClane.
Oh, I messed up last week. He's not the Benny Goodman of horror. He's the Henny Youngman.
Henny Youngman, yeah.
Damn it.
Wow. Well, we could go back in time.
No.
No, Barry, don't fuck the timeline just so I can fix that. So yeah, it's because Robert Englund imbued so much into the character of Freddy Krueger. Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger.
Right.
No one else can be. And your argument of ownership certainly has merit. I think it's more the second one. It's more the ownership of the actor in the role.
Well,
because so much of what makes Freddy is Robert. Jackie Earle Haley can't be Robert Englund. Now, if he were another dream demon doing another thing, it might have worked. But he's Freddy fucking Krueger. Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. So,
yeah.
As we quickly discovered all those weeks ago, when Jack Shoulder tried to recast it as a stunt guy.
Yes.
Only Robert Englund can play this role. Period.
Well, I don't know. See,
maybe in a generation or so, someone can come along.
Or even if this movie hadn't existed, like if the last movie was Freddy versus Jason back in '02,
right, and now it's almost 2020.
I think enough time will have passed that maybe you could have had somebody else be Freddy if you had a competent script and everything. It's at this point it has to be a large passage of time.
Right. Now, if you were to do it, I think the real trick would be you'd have to go back to the Fred Krueger approach from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh wait, this is their opportunity to do that. Oh, and they don't.
They tried.
Right.
And
they tried, but they also tried to imbue him with a lot of the things that were baked in over time on Freddy. And frankly, a lot of the stuff that they ascribe to the character in this doesn't really work. Like there's Freddy Krueger humor in this that falls flat because Jackie Earle Haley is not charming. Beneath it all, Robert Englund is. But let's not put the cart before the horse. So 8 different drafts, all grafted together. We need to cast this movie. Who's going to be Freddy Krueger? The search goes out. And Jackie Earle Haley receives the nod almost entirely based on the strength of his performance in Watchmen.
Also, strength of performance in Watchmen, and there's an internet push for him.
There is an internet push for him, but the producers, before that internet push, were looking at him based on an audition reel they saw for Watchmen.
Yep.
Like, before the movie came out.
And then
they'd seen it and were leaning toward Jackie Earle.
And then they felt they scored a coup with Jackie Earle because of the movie where he played the pedophile.
Yeah.
Like we got the Watchmen.
Yep.
We've got he's mined deep, disgusting territory before.
He'd be willing to take this version of Freddy that goes further than Robert's. And there's even a little bit of there's an aw shucks almost connection moment. Because Jackie Earle Haley auditioned along with his good friend Johnny Depp for a role in 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
He was there, he auditioned, didn't get shit. Johnny Depp became Glenn and became fucking Johnny Depp. So
yeah, but Jackie Earle Haley was already a bad news bear, man.
He was already a bad news bear, yes. But there was this sort of, once at the dance, you don't miss your chance when it comes around again kind of Cinderella's story
Yeah.
with Jackie Earle. And, he got the support of Robert Englund. Robert Englund was like, yes, that's good casting. Robert Englund saw something that I didn't see, I guess.
Well, no, based on previous performances and the spark in his eye, it is good casting. It is not followed upon.
Right, it's not a good performance.
Not a good
but
performance.
It was good casting. That's true. I was more confident in the idea of Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger before I saw it.
Yeah.
Like, just on its surface, when it was originally announced, like, Jackie Earle Haley will be taking on the role of Freddy Krueger, I was like, yeah, you know what? Sure. I see that more than I see Tyler Mane as Michael Myers.
Yep. And yet, oddly enough, I believe Tyler Mane more as Michael Myers.
Agreed. So I basically made a joke last week that we're in the period of the best ofs, because that Wes Craven's New Nightmare kind of takes the best tropes of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1, repackages them in a clever and interesting way that updates them for 10 years later. It's now 2010, and this movie almost trips over itself trying to insert these classic moments from the first movie. And it almost always is a failure point for this movie when it does it. So let's get on this CW cast Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Man, I don't even know if it's CW cast.
Well, I mean, it literally is. That's why I mean, literally some of these actors are on the CW is my reference point. And since we did make the joke several weeks ago about the reboot of Friday the 13th, that it was a CW original, this one's even more literally a CW original. So it begins with this sort of school kid montage.
Yeah.
Before transitioning to Dean at the Springwood Diner. Not the Crave Inn, I might add. Because the preference would always be the Crave Inn.
Yeah.
Where I would eat in Springwood.
That's where I would totally eat in Springwood.
Not the Springwood Diner. I will give, before we get into it, I'll give the opening some high marks. The opening sequence is far more impressive than the opening sequence of A Nightmare on Elm Street. It sets a tone.
Yep.
The rest of the movie doesn't meet this tone. So Dean's in the diner, and he's trying to get a waitress to give him a refill of coffee because he's trying to stay awake. And he's the only one in the diner. The waitress kind of keeps slipping out of view. So it's obvious he's asleep.
I know, that's right off the bat. That's a problem with the movie, is you can always tell when these people are falling asleep or falling into a nightmare.
Well, this is before they introduced the dream visual cue, where there's always this sort of haze,
yeah,
or fisheye effect sometimes when people are having dreams, and it's like, that's stupid.
Yeah, but like right off the bat, I knew he was falling asleep. I was like,
right,
everything that works. That we've talked about this in the original
is the ambiguity of not knowing. That's what makes the layers of that first movie work so perfectly. And when you get to the point in the franchise where they're like, this is clearly a dream, this is clearly the waking world, this is clearly a dream, this is clearly the waking world, is when it starts to get cartoony.
Yes.
In the Englund era. It doesn't help any here. But this sequence is pretty. It jumps.
It jumps.
It's not Nightmare on Elm Street, but it's not a bad horror sequence.
No, it's not.
I would say that's probably true of most of this movie. If this movie was just a straight up horror movie about a dream demon, and Nightmare on Elm Street didn't exist, this would be a good movie. Which is the same complaint I have with Halloween. Or the Evil Dead remakes. It's a good movie, if the other one doesn't exist.
So
Unlike Friday the 13th, which is a good movie on its own. It's almost an improvement on the original.
Yep.
My God, I just gave Friday the 13th credit for something.
I was
You were about to make that joke, weren't you?
I was going to prod you about it, but then you like came to it on your own.
Well, I mean,
You said it on your own. You didn't.
I'll give the devil his due, all right? Jason deserves that one. Because it's true. I mean, it's a better movie.
Yes.
It improves upon the origin story of the character. It's more cohesive. That's not true here. This does not surpass the original. Rob Zombie's Halloween does not surpass the original.
No.
Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead almost does. And we'll talk about that at some point in the future, too. So Dean's trying to get the waitress's attention, follows her into the kitchen. There's some desiccated pig heads, like we're in number 3 for some reason. And then he gets jump attacked by Freddy. Which sets a tone for this movie that I think that I'll just let you know what up front. It's all jump scares. That's what this movie is. It's all jump scares, and it's all brutal violence from Freddy. Which is the antithesis of what works in this franchise.
And it doesn't work for this Freddy.
No.
It worked for the Dream Demon Fred.
In New Nightmare. In that one scene. If it had been routine in that movie, it would not have worked.
Yeah.
And it only worked in that scene because it's the exact same scene as the previous iteration with a twist. The twist is the brutality. That's the only difference.
And for remake or remake adjacent, brutality works in Rob Zombie's Halloween and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Yeah, sure.
Just because of the casting of, ludicrously
a gigantic version of Michael Myers.
Yes. But
Yeah.
and it doesn't work here. Also, from what I understand, I'll say this for later because Freddy hasn't even really shown up yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see him pretty clearly in that first shot, but it's so fast you don't get a feel for him.
Yeah.
Which is intentional, I'm sure. It's so that in your mind's eye, it's so fast you almost see Robert Englund instead.
Yeah. But like I said,
It sets up an expectation that the later reveal of Jackie Earle Haley doesn't need. But that's neither here nor there. So the jump scare wakes him up to see Nancy Holbrook, not Thompson, who is a waitress at the Springwood Diner, pouring him some more coffee and telling him that he'll probably get kicked out if he falls asleep. It is at this point that Laurel fucking Lance walks in to meet with Dean.
her name is Chris in this movie.
Yeah, but she's Laurel fucking Lance. She's always going to be Laurel Lance. She can't escape it. At another table, Quentin, not Lance, is seated, who's played by Kyle Gallner, who was once on Smallville. So this is where Smallville and Arrow finally meet in Nightmare on Elm Street, because Katie Cassidy plays Laurel Lance is Chris. So Quentin's sitting with Jesse and another guy, and Jesse gets pissy because Chris, Laurel, has walked in and is seated with Dan. Because Jesse fancies... Dean, yes, sorry, Dean. Because Jesse fancies himself a more suitable mate for Chris.
Well, they used to date.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know why. Like, I wouldn't go up against Kellen Lutz. That dude's huge.
Right?
And a vampire.
So Jesse storms out, all angrily, because, he can't deal.
And so he can go home and hang out with his Terminator.
Exactly. Quentin stays. Dean tells Chris Laurel that he's afraid to go to sleep because he's being stalked in his dreams by a burned guy with knives for fingers. Now, way back when we did episode 1, I pointed out how long it took for Rod Lane to describe Freddy to Nancy. Like, we get all the way to basically to him being in jail before we get the classic description: burned guy, knife for fingers.
Yeah.
Here we get it in the first 5 minutes. While he's describing it, he spills coffee on Chris. It's so hard not to call her Laurel because she doesn't act, so it's all the same performance. And she runs out to go clean it off, and Dean falls asleep. Freddy kind of rushes him, grabs a steak knife.
You're not real. I am now.
And forces Dean to slit his own throat with a steak knife in front of Laurel as she canary cries us into the opening title card.
The other one of the quick problems I also have that I found out that's not his natural voice. Whereas Robert Englund dropped his register and did Freddy.
But Robert Englund was also modified.
Not to the degree.
Watch number 2 again, sir. That is a pitched audio clip. And that's true of most of 2 and half of 3. And I did comment on it when we watched them.
But not 4, 5, or 6.
Well, no, not 4, 5, or 6.
Not in the Freddy movies.
Right. Just in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's true. It's true.
But, and then, not even, because this is harder to pick up on Robert based on the performance that he gives and his own natural changing of his voice.
Right.
There's so much reverb, I was vibrating when I was watching.
Oh, well, the audio mix in this movie is terrible. There are points where it just kind of falls apart. So, let's just jump back in at Dean's funeral.
Because it's a nightmare movie.
Right?
There's got to be a funeral. If it's a Nightmare on Elm Street or a New Nightmare,
Someone's
there's a
getting
funeral.
Buried. Chris nods off at her boyfriend's funeral because, why not? She sees her younger self all slashed up just standing there and wakes up when Freddy jump scare grabs her leg.
Yep.
Yeah. At the funeral, there's a a collage of pictures she's looking at, and she sees a picture of herself and Dean when they're kids. She doesn't remember having met Dean until high school.
Yeah.
So she's real confused about this. So she then walks up to tell Jesse and Nancy what Dean told her about the burned man stalking him in his dreams. Jesse doesn't believe her. Nancy does. And Jesse's like, no, you don't. That's bullshit. You weren't there. Because reasons?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, at least he believes his delivery, man.
Right.
I mean, I'm not... That's a moment where I fault the script, not the delivery.
Right. Oh, yeah. The performance is fine. And Nancy goes home with Connie Britton. Goes to her room to listen to some music. Falls asleep. The movie does a shitty CGI version of Freddy's head pushing through the wall, which is the most effective image in the original movie.
Yep.
And all it was a fucking hole in the wall and a canvas sheet stretched. All it needed to be. This CG fucking thing, though, is terrible. So, Laurel Lance is trying to solve the mystery of how she met Dean as a kid. And didn't know him until high school. And Oliver's not here to help her solve the mystery, so she's got to do her own research. I will say kudos on the casting here, though. Leah Mortensen, who plays Chris's mom, really looks like she could be Katie Cassidy's mom.
Yeah.
Like, I buy that. Like, I see these two actresses together, I'm like, yeah. I mean, she doesn't look like Katie Cassidy's mom, but she looks like she could be. So Chris goes into the attic, looks through some old photos, finds her slashed blue dress that she saw herself wearing in the dream. And then Freddy Krueger pops out and jumps on top of her.
Remember me?
No, she doesn't. That's the whole point of the movie, Fred.
My other problem with this is he sounds way too much like Carl. Is that his name?
No, he doesn't sound like Carl. he sounds like Rorschach. He sounds exactly like Rorschach. It's the exact same voice that Jackie Earle Haley used for Rorschach, which is not his real voice.
See,
Like, this is not what he sounds like in an interview on the making of documentary. No. The only other place where he sounds exactly like this is Watchmen.
But see, they added to it so much that to me he sounds
like Rorschach in a blender.
No, he sounds like Rorschach mixed with Sling Blade.
I like the way
you talk.
I guess I'll give you that. So she wakes up from her dream, and she goes to school. And she has another dream, where she's sitting in class, and all of a sudden there's like an explosion, and everybody turns to ash, and the room becomes a burnt-out husk, and Freddy's at the chalkboard, and he turns around, and he stalks toward her, cuts her hair off with his finger knives.
Oh, this is my note for this scene.
Yeah.
And it involves the makeup. Like, they went for a more realistic burn makeup than they did for Robert Englund.
Yes.
And son of a bitch, it undermines the fear.
Yeah.
It does not equate to fear.
No, it doesn't. And if you watch the making of, it's half of it's done with digital effects.
Yeah.
Because he's got green paint over half of his face. So he comes up, he cuts her hair, he's taunting her. She wakes up screaming in class, a la Nancy Thompson in the real movie. And she finds that the lock of her hair that Freddy just cut off is sitting on her textbook. So Laurel Lance has just learned that things can be pulled out of the dream world into the real world. So obviously, Laurel Lance is the Nancy Thompson of this movie. And we're just going really fast, right?
No, I think she's Tina, man. I think it's just a long, drawn-out Tina. Because
why are we wasting time having her learn the lesson about pulling stuff out into the real world if we're just going to have to redo this scene later with Nancy H?
Because this is the cool dream.
Because in draft number 3, this was Nancy. But now in draft number 5, the other character's Nancy, probably.
That doesn't make a damn lick of sense.
No, but it's probably what happened.
Oh, yeah. They probably this is the dream sequence, and we're just going to
Let's keep it.
But
let's make it Chris, so that she can have more before she dies.
Because we got to give her something, because, we cast her at this amount, and we got to justify it.
Yep. So Jesse shows up at Laura Lance's house because Laura Lance's mom is going on vacation.
Oh, no. Well, I think she's a stewardess.
I think she's a stewardess.
And she's taking the red eye to London?
Yes.
So,
but in reality, she's running away to Central City because she cannot deal with the fact that Sarah Lance is dead. So, I'm sorry. She's so wooden that I cannot tell the difference between Laurel and this character. It's terrible.
And she emotes more as this character.
Right? And that is the truly scary part. So Jesse shows up and comes through her window as if he were Glenn. The problem is, he's not Glenn. Like, come on, movie, you're drunk. He's not Glenn. He's Rod. He's Rod Lane.
He's obviously Rod Lane because his name is Jesse. And Rod Lane's actor went by Jesse for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Exactly.
Or he's referencing Jesse. In
right,
which
and
case
he's confused.
He shouldn't be crawling in. This isn't the bedroom he should be crawling into.
Right.
He needs to go see our old friend.
Rob Rustler. So, Jesse and Chris discuss their nightmares because he's having them too.
We're having the same dream. That's not possible.
They argue, then they cuddle up to go to sleep. So the movie could do a shitty CGI floating Laurel Lance version of the Tina kill from OG Nightmare.
Oh, we got the jump rope girls in there too.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Because we need some jump rope girls. Because this is a Nightmare on Elm Street.
So, Laurel Christina goes out into the backyard because she hears a noise. Turn around, Amanda Pace. Come back, please. And she finds her dead dog. And Freddy gets his first quip in, and it's not a quip, and it's not funny, and it's kind of...
I didn't even write it down.
Oh, she's petting him. Then she goes into the preschool. And she sees herself and Freddy counting to 10. And then we have a floaty Tina kill that sucks. Yeah. Yep. So this is the first point I remember in the theater and watching it again recently for the purpose of this, thinking, oh shit, why don't I eject this and watch Nightmare on Elm Street? Like, that's the first moment where I'm like, I could just watch the real Nightmare on Elm Street and it would be better for me. I don't know about better for the podcast, but it'd certainly be better for me personally. I'd feel better. So Jesse witnesses the death of Laurel as she floats and then gets slashed down the center with CG blood and then dropped onto the bed. And Jesse bolts. He's not stupid, but he is stupid because he sets off the alarm and is immediately chased by like a shit ton of cops. Why are there so many cops in Springwood, Ohio?
I don't know, because I feel like I've been in Springwood, Ohio before, and it's very hard to find a cop.
Right? You basically have to be a cop's daughter to have access to a cop.
Yeah.
But then that's the old Springwood. This is the new Springwood. So he runs to Nancy's house.
Why he runs to Nancy's house, I don't know.
I don't know. But he pops out in her bedroom. He just magically appears in her fucking bedroom. Because that is what characters named Jesse do. They just appear in bedrooms. And the person has to look at them and go, how'd you get in here?
Yep.
Like, that literally is the one moment where I'm like, is this literally a reference to Jesse? Because it's the same thing.
Probably.
Was this from the version of the draft where they're like, condense the first couple movies into one solid thing? So they were like, well, I mean, Jesse just shows up in rooms, so let's have a Jesse who just shows up in rooms.
I mean, I'll buy it.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't scream as good as the original Jesse, but I mean, who does? So the cops get him, they take him away.
But before that he gives off his.
Well, I mean, he tells Nancy the
jump rock song. He's all in our heads. He's in all our heads.
Yes. Well,
just don't fall asleep. If you die in your dreams, you die for real.
Sets the tone. Lets everybody know. Nancy calls Quentin to tell him what's going on. Quentin, again, by the way, since it's been a while since we mentioned him, is Zach Gallner, who always looks strung out. Well, now we know why he's all strung out, because he can't sleep. He's on drugs, keep him awake, and it's going to get worse. So she calls Quentin and says, this is what's up. Jesse said this is happening. Oh, and by the way, he got arrested. So Quentin heads to the bookstore to start doing some fucking research.
Oh. At least they understand Glenn.
Right. Quentin is now Glenn. Okay, we're good. And I would say that this is probably the most effective beginning of a dream. When he's walking through the stacks of books and they stretch.
Yeah.
But not in the rack focus kind of way where the books at sort of the mid-level get closer and the ones in the back get further away. It's just suddenly there's more rows and more rows. And then Jitter Freddy shows up to fuck it all up. Like, it's a good shot. And then there's Freddy. Okay. Nancy shows up at the bookstore. Nancy and Quentin do research together.
Oh, that's a first.
That's right?
Well,
Hey, the couple that researches together survives the movie together.
that's not true, because in Freddy versus Jason, Mark and Will,
Yeah?
they research together.
They're not a couple.
Oh, I buy them more as a couple than Will and what's her nuts.
Poor Mark. Mark, who's also let's face it, the research gang, 2 in a row, have been Smallville alums.
Yep.
Got to get them Smallville actors to do the research in nightmare movies if you want to survive. Jesse gets told he's been bailed out and he's free to go. And then suddenly he's in the Dream Foundry being harassed by a vengeful Krueger. Freddy slams his fist through Jesse and killing him. The other inmate in the cell's like, I didn't do it.
I didn't do it. I ain't going down for this, man.
There's a camera in the room. I don't know why he's concerned. But okay. Quentin and Nancy's research has uncovered the micro nap, which is the only new invention of this movie. And it makes some sense.
It does.
It really starts to suck in the back act of this movie, in the third act. They abuse the fuck out of this concept. But it's a neat idea. And the idea is that when you're sleep deprived, when you've kept yourself up too long, the body's way of trying to recharge is to force you into a brief REM state to try to recharge. And it's basically why people start hallucinating after a prolonged sleep deprivation.
Yep. 80 hours.
Yeah.
Trust me.
And if you go too long experiencing micro naps, you eventually would fall into a coma.
Yeah.
Now, that's a little junk science-y. Like you could just die. Like that's real world stuff. You can die from sleep deprivation.
Yes.
That's provable.
It's also during this stretch where they introduce something, I feel, because they did a New Nightmare.
Uh-huh.
New Nightmare ties itself to Hansel and Gretel. We talked about that.
Yep.
So let's tie this one to the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
Yes. And there's even this sort of, the Pied Piper's clothes looked like Freddy's striped sweater. I've never heard of that before.
Neither had I. I've more often seen the Pied Piper wearing a patchwork jerkin.
Yeah. Isn't that a gherkin?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so...
But it's definitely not a merkin.
So Nancy asks Connie Britton about the Dean Chris mystery, gets the brush off, so she decides to go take a nap in the bath. So that the movie can do a lame homage to Nancy Thompson in the bath.
Yep.
In the 84 Nightmare. Like, shot for shot. Like, same thing. And then she gets out of the bath and walks into the snowstorm in her bedroom.
Which is one of the
great image.
Cooler image.
That's the kind of stuff they needed to do more of in this movie.
Yes.
Play around with that kind of dream imagery that you couldn't do in 1984.
Yeah.
But let the other stuff kind of drive itself more plainly. And then she walks through the room into the Badham preschool, where Freddy taunts her about their mysterious shared past and the futility of having set an alarm to wake herself up because she set the alarm in her dream.
I actually like that.
I like that, but it's pointless given the fact that 2 seconds later, her phone rings and wakes her up.
Well, it's because they
don't have Freddy taunt her about something that she can't control unless Freddy has the opportunity to briefly get the upper hand because of it. Save that for a later moment instead of here. Or introduce it earlier and have the taunting from Freddy get more explicit after the taunt. After the, you said it in your dreams, and then move forward. Like, it's badly written. Like, it's a good concept. In the context of the scene, though, it's wasted. Because the phone does ring instantly. And it's Quentin calling to tell her that Jesse has died in jail. And then they get together to sort of tear through Connie Britton's office, looking for evidence about the kids having met each other as little kids.
Yeah.
And they're going through, and they find this one drawer that won't close by, like, a lot. So they pull this very flat envelope out. So I have no idea why it would prevent the drawer from closing that much. Also, why did none of these parents throw any of this shit away? Dean's parents kept the photos. It was a dream sequence, but you could argue that Chris's parents kept the slashed up fucking dress.
I know, but why did Marge keep the claws?
Okay, the claws I understand more than this class photo.
I know, but
The class photo can be shredded. The class photo can be, ripped, burned.
I mean, I don't
Fold it up.
Beyond
Placed in a more logical location.
Beyond keeping it, I don't understand why they keep it out where it's so readily available.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. Everything is apparently so well hidden in this franchise that nobody can find it, but then somebody, like, finds it instantly.
Yeah.
Like the cave. Well, Okay, so Connie Britton conveniently kept this one class photo that has everybody's name written on the back. Yeah. My next note, why did none of these parents throw any of this shit away? So Nancy and Connie Britton have a shouting match.
I wanted you to forget.
About all the secrets and the lies, and it's like suddenly you're in Smallville episode.
I wanted you to forget. If you wanted me to forget, burn the picture, Mom.
Right? Finally, Connie Britton stops arguing and gives the backstory about Freddy. And we do have this really cool shot where we push through the photograph into a live action shot.
Yeah.
The first of 3 flashback sequences? 2 flashback sequences that are left over from the version of the script that was actually a prequel. So Freddy is the gardener at the preschool who loved the kids so much. Maybe a little too much.
And he lived in the basement.
He lived in the basement, and he took these kids to a secret cave where he did things to them.
But the parents started to notice things.
Yeah, like, cuts and bruises and...
But he left town before we could confront him, says Mom.
She still stopped short of telling her daughter the fucking truth. And like, no, just left town. So Quentin's kind of satisfied by that explanation. He's like, okay, maybe they are just repressed memories. And I'm like, flag on the play here. Okay? If they're just repressed memories, if you're willing to now believe this, what about your 3 dead friends? How did their repressed memories kill them? Quentin, why are you so willing to take a plea deal to get out of this movie? Is that what it is? You're on set and you're like, if I just say I believe, I'll get killed faster and go?
Well, at that point he's like, I cannot act with
Rooney Mara
right here because she's given me nothing. For God's sake, please bring back the wooden Katie Cassidy.
Right.
Because I'd rather act with wood than stone.
Katie Cassidy, you have failed this movie.
But not as much.
Not as much as Rooney Mara. Oh, thanks, Oliver.
It's nice to see you. I saw you working out on Facebook today.
Maybe that should be a component of the the podcast moving forward. Oliver Queen just shows up randomly to call out who failed the movie the most.
Yeah, we got to get a clip.
Right? Yeah, we can't just do my terrible impersonation of it every time. So Quentin's on board. Nancy's not convinced. She Googles the rest of the kids and finds out that all of the others are fucking dead. All of them.
Very convenient.
Very convenient. Yeah. So
they're already the last of the Elm Street kids.
Yes. So, I mean, like, I guess we don't need a sequel anyways. Which is good, because there's not going to be one. Quentin's at a swim meet, dives into the water, and gets pulled into a dream flashback about the parents killing Freddy during, everything that went on and burning him and all that shit. At no point does the dream actually interact with Quentin.
No,
Freddy's not going after Quentin? How did this happen? Aside from the fact that they shot something and they needed to use it somehow.
They shot something. In the greater scheme of things, based on the twist that comes later, this is set up. Oh, the parents did a horrible thing. Later on.
Oh, it's Freddy sowing the seeds of doubt in Quentin.
Yeah.
For the scene that's fair. That's fair. That it's stupid, but it's fair.
Yeah.
I'll give that to you. So Nancy revives him with some CPR, and they go to confront Quentin's dad, who is Clancy motherfucking Brown.
And is like the school counselor.
Yeah. And they go to talk to him about killing Freddy, and, Kurgan just flat out admits it. He's like, yeah, we killed him. We did it to protect you all. Why not? He's no Connie Britton. He's going to cop to it. He's Clancy fucking Brown. He's going to own it. But he admits that they never found the cave.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about, because that's the moment where Quentin's like, you killed an innocent man.
Yes.
Because of what he saw in his vision, which was just him being manipulated by Freddy.
Yeah.
But what's the point if they're just going to find the... It doesn't go anywhere. It's not necessary. Cut it from the movie. That's the whole point. Does it serve the film? No. Cut it.
But it served a film.
Not this one.
What?
Not this one.
It's like...
That's screenwriting 101.
Well, it served whatever script it was from.
It was in, yeah. So maybe Freddy is innocent, and he just wants vengeance because he was falsely accused and burned to death. All right, so they're going to head to the preschool to investigate. And they're walking out of the building. They're going through the halls, and the movie, like, the Nightmare on Elm Street 1984 timer went off, and they're like, gotta reference a scene from the first movie.
So Nancy's gonna have a micro nap.
Yep.
And Tina is gonna get.
Chris is going to get pulled through the hallway in the body bag. Now, first off, I get that it's to set up that Nancy's now having micronaps.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's completely random, and it doesn't connect to the movie. It's just like, this is the horrifying image we're going to give her because it's from the first movie. The theme of Nancy Thompson, not other one, seeing Tina in the body bag in the first movie was because she'd seen Tina's body and then saw it again on the TV.
Yeah.
And it was a theme that moved throughout the whole movie. That was an image that haunted her for the rest of the film. It was thematic. Here it's just here because it was there. It's like Star Trek Into Darkness, where you have that scene Kirk and Spock at the the engineering chamber, and Kirk's got the radiation poisoning, and he's dying, and you're like, oh my god, I care so much, and then you realize, wait, I'm only caring about this scene because it's the Star Trek 2 scene, and I only care about the Chris Pine performance because of the William Shatner performance. It's that kind of thing. It's eating it. It's like eating itself. It's not. There's no forward momentum. We're relying on a 20-year-old movie to tell us a story and give our scene relevance. It's lazy. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Nah, it's rambly, but it's this movie. It fits. My rambling nature in this particular conversation fits the tone of this movie perfectly. So Quentin and Nancy head to the pharmacy.
Because Quentin's going to get refills for his ADHD, ADD, whatever meds he has that keeps him awake.
Yes. And he goes inside, and Nancy has another micro nap where Freddy brutally pulls her out of the Jeep and throws her across the parking lot. So, basically, in the micro naps, Freddy is Michael or Freddy is Jason. Which is not what makes Freddy terrifying.
Well, I think it's time. Way back earlier on, I teased something and I said I'd bring up later. They might have thematically done this, because Jackie Earle Haley is shorter than the rest of the cast.
Maybe.
So they had to do something to show his physical prowess.
Right.
Because he's literally like 2 to 3 inches shorter than everybody.
Right.
That's also, I think, why there is no scene of him going up against the Kurgan.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
I mean,
Clancy Brown's like 6 foot something.
Quentin, Mr. He himself is not a super tall individual. And for Jackie Earle Haley to be shorter than him,
right?
They had to everything relied on camera trickery and apple boxes, yeah. And so I think they might have him do as physical as he is when he does it to offset the fact that there may be shots that they missed where he is shorter.
Yeah, probably. So Nancy goes inside because Quentin's taking too long at the pharmacist. And Quentin's taking too long because the pharmacist is refusing to refill Quentin's pills.
Well, he's out of refills. You can get in trouble for that shit.
Well, he's out of refills, and you do get in trouble for that shit. And Quentin hasn't slept in several days, and he looks like he's strung out.
That too.
I mean, I wouldn't refill his pills even if he fucking had refills.
I might have, because, that might induce the child to sleep.
Right, that's true. Well, I mean, looking at him, I don't know that he hasn't slept. I think he's just strung out. All right, we do enter into probably
the coolest shifting between real world and dreams. Yes, that's what I was
about to say. This is cool shot, best so far is my note. Because thanks to the micro naps, Nancy is shifting back and forth between the sleeping and the waking world. And they take this alleyway in this aisle in the pharmacy, and they tie it to a section of the Dream Foundry.
Yep.
And it's structured really well so that when Freddy's doing things to her while she's in the foundry, it's having effects in the aisle in the real world. And it's brilliantly cut. This is the one moment where I'm like, that's a solid sequence. That director, this could be his golden ticket. Had he made an entire movie of visuals like that.
That, the aforementioned snow in the bedroom shift to the outside world. Like, those are the things that I was looking for in the Nightmare remake with modern technology.
Yep.
Or modern for 2010.
Right. And we got some of that. But mostly we got just resold the movie we already had with lesser quality. Freddy cuts her, and she pulls a bit of sweater into the real world when she wakes up.
Yep.
Quentin takes her to the hospital to be worked on by the original April O'Neil, who tries to sedate Nancy.
He palms some kind of drug.
It's adrenaline.
See, I know it's adrenaline later, but I couldn't tell what it was when he palmed it.
Right. So he palms some sort of shot, which later turns out to be adrenaline, and he sneaks Nancy out of the hospital. And I'm left to wonder, why was Judith Hogan in this movie?
Because actors need paychecks.
Right. So they drive to the preschool. Quentin micro naps and sees Freddy. Swerves so as to not hit him, and then crashes the car.
Yep.
They walk the rest of the way. They make it to the school. Micro napping / jump cutting Freddy the whole fucking way. And the jump cuts just get to be too much. They're badly handled. Yeah.
So I have a note in here. It's got to be a piece of dialogue while they're going. It says, "I don't know what's real anymore."
Well, is that them or is that you? Because frankly,
okay, that may be me.
it is disorienting, the cutting back and forth between the jump cuts of Freddy and the actual structural map of where they are in the cornfield, and then walking down the street, and then they're at the why am I blanking on it? The preschool.
I think Quentin says the line.
I it's confusing enough that I could easily see it being you or me, because it is confusing. The geography is not maintained throughout the cuts. Like, they get out of the car and they're in the cornfield, and then they're on the street, and then there's a cornfield, and then there's a building. Is the building in the dream? Is the cornfield in the dream? Is there any dream? It's so chaotically cut. This is where the movie starts to get immemorable and doesn't hold up.
So they go down into the basement.
They go they go into the preschool. They go down into the basement. They easily find Freddy's lair.
Yeah.
Like in 2 seconds. So these adults who years earlier knew that what this man was accused of showed up to look for his lair before killing him with police, had no luck finding this place, and these kids find it in 2 seconds.
Well,
the Kurgan is better than this.
The problem,
he tracked Connor McLeod down before Connor McLeod was even immortal. The Kurgan is good.
like, he knows he's going to change.
He knows what's happening.
And they find Polaroids, and they're all of Nancy, the little girl.
Yeah.
It's creepy, but manufactured creepy is what I guess.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I don't care anymore.
Right.
Like, if this child molester, because he's a molester in this one, not a murderer.
Yeah.
Had it been succinctly revealed way earlier, I might care at this point.
Right, but no.
But I don't.
Yeah.
And I really don't. I don't care for,
And they toyed around with the idea of he's guilty, he's not guilty, he's guilty, not guilty, okay, he's guilty.
Yeah.
What was the point of toying around with the idea that he might not be guilty if you were just going to turn around and have this reveal at the end? It's just exhausting. This movie's exhausting. All right, so Nancy decides that because the other Nancy pulled a hat out of the dream and she pulled a sweater out of the dream, that she could totally pull Freddy out into the real world.
And while while all this pulling of Freddy out into the real world, Quentin pulls the cutting arm off of a paper cutter.
Yes.
Not as cool as a shot as it was in The Faculty.
No. But still a cool shot.
Yeah.
And it's a good throwback to The Faculty. By the way, if you like The Faculty, go check out Robert Rodriguez Revisited from the Blanchard brothers, in which they talk about The Faculty and all the other Robert Rodriguez films.
I'd much rather be watching The Faculty right now.
Right?
I don't even like that movie.
No, but I'd rather watch it than this piece of shit. I feel like I'm watching I would almost rather watch the Friday the 13th again. All of them.
So Nancy goes to sleep.
With Quentin watching over her. Quentin, who is told, of course, what?
Not to go to sleep.
But he is not told, whatever you do, don't go to sleep. The line of dialogue is not said.
Yeah.
It should, because Quentin falls asleep fucking instantly. And gets beaten and slashed by Freddy pretty thoroughly. Freddy goes after Nancy. There's a chase through the halls of the dream version of the school. She runs through a melty floor that is supposed to be a call out to the melty steps. But it's just weird.
It looks like a pool of blood.
Yeah.
Or a pool of chocolate syrup. Or digital chocolate syrup.
Right. Considering none of it gets on Nancy, yeah, I think it's digital.
And then she seeps through it and falls into bed like a reverse Glenn.
Yes. Wearing a little schoolgirl dress. And Freddy ties her to the chair, ties her to the bed, because Freddy doesn't want to kill Nancy H. Freddy wants to keep her here forever. That was the whole plan, to push her into a sleeplessness to the point where she went through the micro naps into the coma so that she'd never wake up again and he could have her forever.
That is like that you know what I like about Nightmare on Elm Street? Yeah. Freddy's taking revenge on the kids of the parents who fucking killed him.
Yep.
Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm now an undead dream demon, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna get the grown-up version of the preschooler that I molested.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I've been watching a lot of Criminal Minds.
Right.
And that's totally out of, like, his victimology. Like,
right. She's grown up now, so he doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's not what he gets his rocks off. But the other thing, if the kids accused him of being a molester and he wasn't, and he was getting revenge for that, that makes sense.
Yes. If he was killed because they gave evidence that he was a molester and he wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
That would give him a more direct reason to go after the kids than them being the children of the parents who killed him.
Yep.
So, yeah, it would give a broader reason. It would connect back in a way that makes more sense. Or, if there was a kid that he molested, and these kids gave evidence, and none of these are the kid.
Yeah.
That would make sense. The Nancy part of it makes it not work.
So while he's there, she somehow gets a pair of scissors and stabs him into the eye. It's all, and you can't hurt me. You're in my world.
Which is set up to just rob from a more superior film.
And I'm your boyfriend now.
Which is just robbed from a more superior film.
And this Quentin stabs the adrenaline all Pulp Fiction style.
I will give it, I will grant this. The cross-cutting here is pretty brilliant. With Quentin on top of her, ready to give the adrenaline shot. Stab it right into her chest. in the waking world version of Nancy.
Yeah.
While at the exact same moment, in the exact same position, Freddy is on top of the dream world Nancy, about to plunge his finger knife into the same spot.
Yeah.
And the cross-cutting between them is really, really good. Like, it's well handled. It's a competently directed shot. It goes right up there with, the crossing back and forth into the dream world and snow. These three shots. If the rest of the movie had been anything like these three things,
We'd be having an entirely different discussion.
entirely different conversation.
He Pulp Fictions that right into her heart, and she pulls Freddy out, and he and Quentin fight.
Yep. And Quentin's not a good fighter.
Well, he's been awake for a really long time.
Right. True. I mean, but little Miko Hughes in the previous movie is a better fighter. Just saying. So there's stabbing through shields made out of chalkboards. There's smacking. There's punching. There's stabbing in legs.
And he looks like he's getting ready to take out Quentin, and then Nancy from behind cuts his hand off
with Quentin's paper cutter. Slices Freddy's hands off. The glove kind of skitters to the floor, and then she just slashes his throat wide open.
And then she delivers the line.
Welcome, now you're in my world, bitch.
Now, bitch.
Yeah, basically. See, I was saying the Monica Keena version.
Yeah.
Like, it's so obviously stolen that my mind goes straight to the Monica Keena version from the previous movie.
Yeah.
Welcome to my world, bitch. And then they're like, well, you know what we should do?
Burn him again.
Burn him again. So they do. They light him ablaze and burn his body down, and everything's great. And in the aftermath, you can hear the cops in the background say that they didn't find a body inside.
Yep.
So Connie Britton takes Nancy home, walks in front of a mirror where Freddy is her reflection. His claws burst out of the mirror and through Connie Britton's face and pulls her back into the mirror.
And the mirror reforms.
And the mirror reforms, and the movie's over. And the CG assault on Connie Britton is not as bad as the blow-up doll Marge, but it's still pretty bad.
It's still pretty bad.
Now these, and I did tease this way back last week, these effects are bad. These digital effects are very bad. These digital effects are bad because the plan was to finish them in post, because they were half-formed, and they were going to be touched up to be 3D effects.
Someone decided not to, right?
And they decided not to do it, but they never went back and spent the rest of the money to complete the effects, because the effects were left incomplete for that purpose. So that's why CG looks really bad in this movie. It's because it was meant to be redone. But that's why stuff like the snowfall, which was CG, looks fine, because that was never meant to be a 3D element. The ones that look really bad, if you pay attention, are the ones that have a component where it bursts forward or comes out of something, like Freddy coming through the wall, or the arm coming out and going through Connie Britton's face and pulling her in. Connie Britton, whose character's name I never actually learned. I just kept writing it down.
Gwen.
Just kept calling her Connie Britton. Since the movie came out, I've just called her Connie Britton. So yeah, that's this fucking movie. It is, if I were to rate all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, excluding this one, bottom of the stack would be Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. If I were to rate them with this one would be the bottom of the fucking stack. This is the worst. There are some interesting things in it, though. That's the problem. It's not a complete failure.
No.
There are bits and pieces where you're like, that's good, and that's good, and that's good. But the rest of the movie around it is terrible. And I'm fundamentally not a Katie Cassidy fan, as people who follow the 4-color arc know well. Let's let Katie Cassidy go somewhere else. So, what's the best kill in this movie for you?
Oh, best kill. There were kills in this movie? Did we watch this movie?
Yeah, we watched it. There were a handful of kills. There were some okay ones. I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first.
The best kill was Dean's throat slash.
Yeah.
It's a great gore effect. It establishes the power of this Freddy.
Yeah. See, I can't even visually remember. Jesse got clawed through the chest, right?
Yeah. Jesse got clawed through the chest in an almost identical shot to when Freddy's claw went through Freddy's chest in Freddy vs. Jason. Like it's almost identical.
That's what I thought.
And it's unfinished CG because it was meant to be a 3D shot. And it's pretty terrible. I would probably put it.
Well, it's like I don't even remember it. I watched the movie.
Yeah.
I remember Dean's very well because it sets the tone. It's at the beginning.
And it kicks things off in a fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't even have enough visual memory of this film, having watched it a few days before I did, because I needed to borrow the Blu-ray from you to watch it, that you can't even remember the kills enough to pick a best and worst.
Well, like there's Lutz. I'll call him Lutz because he's Kellen Lutz. Dean dies. Yeah. Jesse dies.
Dean dies. Jesse dies. Laurel Lance dies.
Katie Cassidy dies. That's it.
That's it. Yeah. So I mean, you've got 3 to pick from. It's pretty easy. Well, Connie Britton. Connie Britton dies.
Yeah, like.
And you could add Freddy to the mix as well, because we do see on screen the death of the pre-burned Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, but that's not even interesting.
No, it's not.
Because he gets on fire, and he runs out, and then he dives into the water, and then Quentin comes out of his dream.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, ooh, Quentin's going to drown.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. So, yeah, I got to go with Dean.
All right. And worst kill?
I got to go with Connie Britton.
Laurel Floating Lance.
I like that better because it looks not as fake.
Not as fake. It's almost the fakiest thing in the movie. The fakiest thing is Connie Britton, yes.
Yeah.
I'll grant. But no, because I never really felt like the Connie Britton thing really is a kill. I mean, she dies, yeah, but it's Marge getting sucked back into the house. That's all it is.
Yeah, but because of the claws,
a bad version.
Claws through the eyes and the yanking, it's Marge getting ripped in the house, and it's a kill. It's the two things together, and half-ass both.
Yes. Yeah, that's really what this movie is across the board. It's 2 things together, and it half-asses both of them. Yeah, and there's a reason why the people of Platinum Dunes, their phones didn't ring for 2 straight years. It's because they made this piece of shit. Like, my reaction when we saw this in the theater was visceral.
Yes.
Like you remember us walking out and me being like, that's the worst fucking movie I've ever seen in my life. And I saw American movie. I saw Coven.
Isn't it Coven?
It's no, man, because that'd be like Oven.
Damn, now I want to watch American movie again.
Right? Totally. For any of you who have not seen American Movie, it's an amazing experience of one guy's desire to make a horror movie. Not a good one. And his good friend who helps him along the way. It's a fun little documentary. But, yeah. So, that was Nightmare on Elm Street, the reboot. And now, folks, you see why I suggested we will save for next week a much better film so that we can end on a high note.
Now, here's an interesting thing about it.
Yeah. There are interesting things about this movie?
Well, yeah, because
Sure.
we've now come to Financial Corner.
Yes, Financial Corner.
It had a budget of $35 million.
The biggest budget of any Nightmare movie ever made.
And domestic, as we haven't touched on foreign, we've just done domestic straight through. 63 mil. 28 mil profit. That's usually enough for somebody to make another movie in this franchise.
Yeah. And yet, critical reception was bad.
Yep.
Fan reaction was worse. And it had a sharp drop-off in week 2. Like, people went and saw this on name recognition alone. Like, people went and saw this because it was Nightmare on Elm Street. Crowds were thick opening weekend. And then it died in the theater. Because it was terrible. It was, such a bad movie. Such a bad movie. Unlike Nightmare on Elm Street, we walk out of that. Unlike Friday the 13th, we walked out of that movie. I was like, "This is great." Walked out of this movie. I was like, "Fuck you for bringing me to this. This pisses on the legacy of one of my favorite movies."
And we didn't know going in.
I know.
Like
I felt betrayed by Rob Zombie's Halloween. Then I saw this.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
high art that Rob Zombie's Halloween.
in comparison, certainly. So, for those of you who have been listening to us do the Nightmare on Elm Streets and have been feeling like, where's that angst? Where's that hatred that you guys felt in the middle of the Crystal Lake run? Here it is. Here it is, folks.
Well,
The vitriol.
here it is, but it also
It's only one movie, though.
but it works out too with what you said.
Yeah.
In the middle of the Friday the 13th run.
Yep.
Like numerically, we reach the same point. It just happens to be at the end because there's less movies.
Yep. Very true. Very true. But, yeah. So that's it. Any final thoughts? Any words of encouragement you want to give to anybody who maybe is midway through this movie and can't quite seem to finish it?
I don't know what's real anymore.
All right, folks. For every town has an Elm Street. We've been the Brothers Blanchard. I've been Matthew Blanchard.
I've been Patrick Blanchard.
And this has been the worst experience in the entire Elm Street saga. I'm not even going to dignify it with a catchy outro. Thanks for listening.
Nat. Ah.